do you need, desire, want more cash flow in your spiritual business? Do you need, desire, or want more cash flow in your spiritual business? And do you want to create a greater rate of return? So that means rate of investment, right? So that means, per hour, that means monthly, that means yearly. So do you want, do you need, like you need more cash flow in your business, and do you desire that, for freedom, for that feeling of freedom, for that feeling of abundance? So let me know if that is you, and do you feel overworked and underpaid? Hello, Jen. Hello. Hey, glad you're here, right? Okay, so here we are in this place of curiosity. And do you feel overworked and underpaid? Okay, because today, if that's you, then today is your training, because the title is When Spiritual Concepts Stop Your Cash Flow. So when spiritual concepts stop your cash flow. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to start with very simple questions related to this topic. Number one, right now in your business, a simple yes and no. Right now in your business, do you need a bigger cash flow? Basically, do you need more money, right? Do you need more money? Answer the question, yes or no. It's like, if you're running a business, you kind of know the answer, right? It's either yes or no. No, I'm doing great and it's fine. And no, yes, I could use a bigger cash flow, right? So Jen says, I've always felt overworked and underpaid in every job. So that's also interesting too, Jennifer, to see your always statement. Okay, because now there's something there that is, reoccurring. And so again, as I always teach you guys, is like our spiritual house is what, supports our business, right? So it's, where does this live in my house is the first question we want to start to ask, okay? Where does that feeling of overpaid, right? Yeah. So just like, yeah, there's a pattern there, right? And that's the first step, right? Sometimes you just think, oh my God, everybody's like underpaying me, right? And this is like this glasses we wear that we're actually putting, we unconsciously have on, and we don't realize, oh, wait a minute. And so I love what you said, there's a pattern here. So that's the sort of the second stage of awareness. It's like, I see something here. Oh, wait a minute, right? So this is where we start to kind of analyze, right? And contemplate. So this is a good awareness. I'm glad that you're starting to see it that way. Hello, good morning, beautiful Claudia. Thank you for being here. So, my first question, and so I want you to, so Jennifer says, yes, please. Answer the question, right now in your spiritual business, do you need more cash flow? It's a simple yes or no, okay? So just answer the question in the comments. I want to know yes or no, okay? Okay, and number two, please, allow yourself to, again, get grounded, feel what's on the floor, right? So, kind of move the energy down a little bit out of the screen and into your body so that you can actually hear, what I'm saying. Yes, so Claudia says yes, right? And I say yes. Okay, so number two, if yes, why? Why do you need and why do you want a bigger cash flow? Okay, so write that down. Why? Just first thing that comes to your mind, why? Why do you need a bigger cash flow? There's a practical reason. And why do you want? There's a spiritual reason, right? So what are they? Let yourself understand that so that, again, your compass comes from within. So number three, question number three. Look, it's hard to put like 3 fingers up. How come it's not happening for you? So what is the reason? Why Why? We all have a, we have our whys, and then how come it's not happening for me? Why is it not a bigger cash flow? What's going on? What's the reason? What is your story about that? Okay? So, because based on my money worth, less pay equals less worth, and more pay equals more worth. This is what Jennifer's saying. But also, making low wages isn't sufficient enough to sustain myself financially. So there you go, right? So there is the story of, I'm not really worthy to, receive more. And so then, that's going to be my physical manifestation, where I'm, kind of unconsciously going for those low wage jobs because I feel like, okay, that's what I'm worth, right? So this is a good awareness, Jen. So it's beautiful. You just say it out loud. Just meet yourself where you're at, right? Allow yourself just to hold you in that tender space, right? And then the practical side, right? Because, low wages isn't sufficiently sustaining myself financially. It's just not practical, right? There's a practical side to this physical manifest universe. Okay, yes, living in abundance and joy and that kind of frequency is definitely beautiful. But we also have bills to pay. So there's this practical, very practical side, and very often in the spiritual community, we get kind of like the two kind of battle each other out. There's this internal battle between our spiritual growth and our financial growth, and they kind of like, so I kind of want to let these guys work in harmony versus like, oh my God. Okay, so thank you. Been working on it much recently. Okay, beautiful. So those are the three questions. Simple yes or no. Do you need more cash flow? If yes, why? Okay, so you answer that. Why do you need it and why do you want it? Okay, and then how come it's not happening for you? Okay, and all of us, doesn't matter. It's not the amount of money in your bank account. It's starting to see and kind of peel back the layers of what's going on. Where does this live in my house? Okay. And what I want to tell you guys is it doesn't matter where you are financially. Even the people who are financially abundant and spiritually abundant are going to still ask themselves these questions. So that's why this group is called the Discipline of Yoga and Business, because our spiritual practice is essential at all moments, right? This moment. Because again, as we know in concept, this moment is the only moment. Okay, so please understand that, so that you're not separating yourself from like, oh my God, she's got it all figured out. No, that's not the case. They've got that practice figured out, right? And then they consistently implement that practice. Okay, so that's it. So mastery is mastering the basics. That's one thing I always say. So most of us will say yes, I need a bigger cash flow. And especially if we start to understand it from a spiritual concept, because we as spiritual beings naturally want to expand. Why? Because we are infinite beings. Yes, we are a soul experiencing ourselves through this finite body, right? But there's a natural yearning to expand. And as you know, when we're not in that expansion, there's this kind of we have this compelling, there's this kind of like inner voice inside calling us towards what our soul is asking of us. And sometimes the soul and sometimes the universe is speaking to us and we're like, we hear you, but it's like, oh my God. Or sometimes we can't hear it because there's so much of that, like what Jen was saying, the self-worth and all that. It's very hard. But we'll have moments of like, oh my gosh, yes, okay. And you naturally will be drawn to certain things in your life, right? On a spiritual path. Maybe it's astrology, maybe it's the moon, maybe it's, working with abandonment, maybe it's working with binge eating, maybe it's working with ADHD. Like maybe it's working with panic attacks. Like there's these natural things that we start to get drawn to, just naturally, no matter what our state of being is. So I would say everybody in a spiritual business, the answer to wanting more cash flow is yes. Why? Because cash flow is a physical manifestation of our mind, our thoughts, and our energy, right? So it's just an expansion, an extension of our inner self, right? So we can just look at it in that way. So it's very natural, right? For us to kind of want that, yeah? So, for example, we all have unique individual callings. So this is where why I asked you guys to answer why. Like, why do you want it, right? And why do you need it? Because we all have these individual callings, right? So for me, it's like I've always had a calling to speak about human consciousness, to speak about humanity and the unseen world, the metaphysical world. I've always, since I think I could remember, have been interested in that. It's like grade 2, I think. I did a presentation on near-death experiences. So it's always been in me, and you all have that calling that has always kind of called you, right? Just naturally called you, right? So we all have this unique, so this is where it gets unique. We all have a unique calling. And so that unique calling, this is why I want you guys to answer the why, because it's unique to you. And that unique to you is your unique inner truth. So that's why I asked you to answer why. Why do I want this? Why do I need this? Right? There's just the practical side, that we all we have basic needs. And at the same time, we have this spiritual inner calling. So where you want to attune your compass is there. Not there or her or him or she. It's that job or whatever, that person. It's why, what is true for me? What is my inner calling? What is the download that keeps on coming through me so often? That it's so hard to ignore. No matter what I do, I'm constantly being drawn towards that. Yeah, so like for me, I've always been drawn to human consciousness, and so I kind of went on the path of yoga and meditation to kind of just see myself in a human body in this spiritual experience. And I also am interested in business. Okay, so like. And I actually ignored the business side of me for a long time. I kind of was just doing it on my own, but I never spoke about it to other people. I mean, I think people naturally saw it. Like when I started to kind of let myself see myself in that way is when other of my well-respected peers are like, oh yeah, you're such an, your daughters are like entrepreneur just like you. And they would actually use those words, like businesswoman just like you. And so, so I'm like, okay. So it's like, I see that in myself and other people see it in me. So I think it was like universe saying, yes, okay. And again, it wasn't because the external was telling me, it's just because I had that inside of me, and then someone outside of me, like, it was like my mirror. It's like, yes, yeah, right? And you guys, I'm sure, have those experiences too, where you have these interests of chakras or astrology or something like that. And then you have somebody like talk to you and you're like, wow, I really see how interested you are in that. So it's like, people are always these mirrors. So does this resonate with you? Do you guys have that unique inner truth calling that is unique to you? Let me know what that is. And again, don't overthink it. Just like, what's that thing? What's that thing that is unique to you that has always been calling you out, right? Okay. So, what I start to realize is right now my purpose is to bridge that gap between this thing that you're aligned with, your soul's aligned with, into a sustainable, viable, cash flow abundant business, right? And so Claudia says, my calling is Vedic astrology, right? like we all have something really nerdy and we're like, oh my God, it's like we just can't stay away from that, and it just keeps on coming towards us. So that's beautiful, right? So just allow yourself to receive that download. And Jen says, I've had callings in my whole life, right? Crystals, chakras, astrology, Buddha, etc. But how do I make a career out of that? Lost in the way that I don't have a direction and what to do. Okay, so good. So right now, Jen, you are at a good starting point where it's like, okay, I know that that's the thing, okay? And the thing for me has always been yoga. And if I look externally and I just kind of look in the mass and I just sort of see like what everyone else is doing, I'm not necessarily going to be following an inner compass that is true to me, right? Because as your, this is the thing, the soul constantly is trying to speak to you, right? And the first thing, as you know, is for that to be clear, we must clear the physical body of its core wounds. We must clear the mental body of the story of unworthiness, and we must clear energy. Okay? And then we start to listen to what the soul is saying, and it's moment to moment, because it's these tiny steps that the soul is like, go do that, go do that, and implementing it from that place. Because where we get confused is we forget about our practice, right? We forget about, holding the crystals, tuning into our chakras, listening to the stars. We forget about that, and we go out there and with that thing and then we get all like intellectual and all dramatic, okay, and traumatic about it. We forget to hear what the simple voice inside of us is saying. Shh, do that. Okay? And I know it sounds almost too simple, but that's what it is. It's kind of like this constantly re-gearing to your inner soul and being able to, so what we teach our clients, if you were to work with me, is being able to discern between those, the trauma, the core wounds the lenses that we see are through, and your soul's calling, okay, and your soul's voice. Right? And so I think it's important to discern between the two. So wait, let me read here. Claudia says, I want to prosper financially because I want to make a positive change by investing in my well-being and lifestyle. So Claudia, as you know, right, the practice is always the same, where it's like, well, how is that happening now? Right? And even for you, Jen, how is part of your calling happening now? You want to start to see, that's where the abundance frequency starts, right? It's like you want to start to see, how is it happening actually right now in tiny baby steps. Oh, hi, Mari. Mari's at work and she's like playing hooky and to be with us. Anyway, so thank you for being here. And so that's what that is. So I hope that answers your question, Jen. Let me know how that landed for you. But that's a challenge, right? Of listening and being here in the now moment, because the now moment is very simple and it just says, do this. And then it requires us to physically take action, right? And that's sort of like, hello, Myri, happy that you're here. I won't tell anybody. So that's what it is. And so that's why it's so important to continue to use your spiritual practice as your foundation. And that's the beauty of being, on the spiritual path and accumulating all of these assets that you've been accumulating from your astrology, from your chakra work, from your crystal work, because you already have it. You already have it in your pocket. So you know how to bring yourself here in the present moment. You know how to clear your mind. You know how to listen. And then this is where the courage comes from. The courage, the cœur is heart in French, right? Is to actually take that one step towards that place. Okay? And so yes, I've been told my clients work with crystals and astrology in a different way. People usually do it. All means that I have to invent a new way of doing something that is where I'm like, what do I do? Okay. Okay, so we'll talk about that more. And Claudia is talking about one ears are ringing. Ooh. Okay, what does that mean for you? One of the ways it's happening right now is that I have the time to take and the moment to relax and walk my dog, for example, and I can work in home, right? Yes. Okay, so create this simplicity here, Jen. So what I feel like is happening for you is like, got it all out there, and it's like, start to center yourself. Okay, so this is the thing. What I see in the spiritual community, and why I titled this thing, why spiritual concepts stops your cash flow, right, is that there's this kind of confusion of this idea of being detached, the idea of just let that go, the idea of not being so attached to worldly goods. Okay, and this is where it gets confused, where we take that spiritual philosophy and we confuse it. And this is how I want you to start to understand. If you are starting to show up to work, and this is a little red flag, with resentment, okay, with irritation, where you're like, oh God, I have to service these people again, right? The energy and the frequency, and so you understand the philosophical spiritual concept of, just detach from that, just let go. Maybe I don't, and you feel like you're underpaid and overworked, and then what happens is you try and use that intellectual, philosophical, spiritual concept in that time where you feel undernourished, where you feel underpaid, where you feel overworked, and it doesn't work. Because why? One, the reason why you got to that place, and the only reason why I know is because I've been there. The reason why you get to a place of resentment, or you don't want to show up for work, or you feel like you're not like at 1,000% when you're with your clients and when you're doing your thing, is because the frequency in which you're moving through, right, is not the truth that we talked about at the beginning. Why do you want this? What's your unique calling? It's a frequency and energy that's coming from shame, that's coming from blame, and that's coming from guilt, right? So when Jen, you said unworthiness, that is a frequency and a lens of shame, right? And then guilt, right? It's like, maybe I shouldn't, be receiving money for what I'm doing. And blame, like, oh my God, okay, yeah, it's easy for you to say because, like, but I don't have it that way. And it's like, you have all the money and I don't have all the money, right? So I want you guys to start to see that, because those frequencies of shame, right, of blame, of guilt, which is like the entire planet, we all are experiencing that, is what's going to get you to that place where you feel overworked and underpaid. Okay? And where the detachment, right, from worldly goods gets you, and when you are not actually integrating and implementing, is when you actually have your own truth, right? Your own truth of wanting to, own a house in Italy, your own truth of expanding and having a team, your own truth of, going to this school to learn this, or working with this coach, or offering your family like this dream vacation to wherever, right? When you have your own unique dream that continues to feed your soul, but then you don't necessarily listen to that, and then you have these unconscious, unworthiness stories, guilt stories, shame stories that move through you. That frequency is actually what is holding you back, right? And you intellectualize the process of letting go, right? Of detaching, of actually numbing out. Because this is what I also see. People think they're practicing detachment, but really they're numbing and they're suppressing, They're deeper wounds, of frustration. Like first it comes out as anger and frustration, but there's a deeper wound, there's a deeper wound of abandonment, of rejection. Let me know how this is landing for you guys. So what I'm trying to say here is that, the spiritual concept stops you from the cash flow because it's a concept still in your mind. But the frequency in which you're operating at is through that lens of shame, is through that lens of blame, is through that lens of guilt. And so, of course, by the time you show up to do your work, that frequency is not sustainable. So thus you're going to feel overworked, and you're going to feel underpaid, and you're going to feel self-centered and greedy, right? For wanting what you want because of some past story. But here's the thing, this is where we get confused. If we actually center in self, we continue to hear our truth. And if we have the courage to continue to center in self and act on that, right? So for me, it's like the ability to act on, like, speaking about business and spirituality. Like for me, that was a big thing, okay? It's not such a big thing anymore, but it was a big thing before because I too had the judgment, the sense of abandonment, the sense of rejection, the sense of, oh my God, blame, other people, guilt, shame. I had all of those lenses that I could not see my own truth clearly until I saw that. And that's what we teach. If you were to work with me, we would discern those two voices. And the other thing too is what a lot of people think is that we need to shut that voice up. We need to suppress. We need to detach. We need to numb her out. When really, we just need to give her a seat at the table and give her what she needs. If you have feelings of shame, if you have feelings of blame, if you have feelings of guilt, which we all have again, okay, they need to be seen and they need to be heard. And that part of you needs to actually be liberated. That's true freedom. To really understand that we have that aspect of us as human beings, okay, all of us, all 7 billion of us on this planet have that. And then we also have our spiritual guidance. And so sometimes where it gets confused and the spiritual concepts get confused is we're intellectualizing the spiritual concept through the lens of shame, blame, and guilt. Okay, so let me know how this is landing for you, right? And then we try to intellectualize our way out of our situation now, right? By saying, oh, okay, I'm just gonna let that go. Like that, the truth, our dream, the thing that keeps on downloading through us, right? I'm gonna just like let that go. What a great breakdown. Cool, thank you. I'm happy it's making sense. Sometimes it's like we have these like big, I think in big, expansive like ways, and it's like sometimes to like distill it down. I'm like, I hope I'm not talking this like big vortex circle here, but so I'm glad it's landing with you, Myri. If you have any takeaways or questions or insights, write them down, because again, that's what's going to help us integrate what's happening here. Because again, it's not just us, it's not just me and you. Universe is downloading this through me, and you're also here, and we're giving each other what we need. Okay, so that's what the biggest thing I see in the spiritual community is, that they mistake the money and the meaning of money and wanting money. So what it looks like is, oh, you see somebody, okay? Raise your hand if this is you. Or you see somebody with like a Maserati or a Porsche, and they're sitting on they're in their car sitting on the street, or they're like, driving by, and you're looking at them. Raise your hand if you do this, and you immediately judge them. Okay? You're like, oh, look at that person, blah, blah, right? We literally separate ourselves, because that yoga talks about unifying. But we literally separate ourselves from that human being, that soul, right? That also has a purpose. And we have no idea what their story is. But yet we project and we blame and we place a whole story, an image about this person because of their car. Okay? Come on, tell me you haven't done that. I like, we have in my neighborhood is pretty what's the word? There's a lot of affluent people in this neighborhood, and there's a lot of like nice cars in this neighborhood, like nice or whatever, expensive or whatever you want to call it. And it's very easy when you see somebody sitting there on the street to have a whole story about them. So easy. That's the easy route. Versus actually, again, saying self-centered. So we think they're self-centered when really we're not centering in ourselves, right? And in our truth, right? And getting curious. Oh, wow, what's their story? How did they create such abundance in their life? Wow, they got their dream car. That's so cool, right? You know? So that's a different energy than from separation and judgment. I want to read what Mario is saying. Okay, the more I have started working towards my dream, I've been having nightmares where I'm afraid for my life and waking up drenched in sweat. So much fear for my dream. Why? Yeah? So what I hear is like, we have to understand that we're constantly in process, right? It's like, I think on the spiritual path, we get confused with, oh my gosh, if I am happy, if I am joyful, if I'm peaceful, like at all hours of the day, then I must be doing something right. And we leave very little room for our ability to process and purge our fears, our deep wounds and our fears, right? There's something in the physical body, is what I'm hearing, that is still very much imprinted, because it's kind of like if you got bit by a dog, and then even a little small yuppie dog comes, the body, it's like, oh, the nervous system's like, oh, dog, right? And so for you, Maria, what I hear is that you're moving towards your dream, and it's conjuring up the imprint, the old wounds in your body, right? That's like, okay, I have to be myself. I have to speak up. I have to, there might be something there that physically feels similar to a trauma that you have experienced in the past. Right? So the physical body is sweating and then the mind translates that as, oh, this is bad, fear's bad, oh, right? When really, it's the physical body that's purging and processing, saying, hey, see me, hear me, feel me, hold me with tenderness. Because I need to be seen, I need to be heard, and I need to be felt, not just intellectually, but physically. So when those things happen in the physical body, we must utilize not just the mind, because all of this, and this is what I teach our clients, is that we must process in the body, because we live in a body. We must process through the mind, not just the mind, right? Because that's where that spiritual concept gets confused. And we must process energetically, right? So Myri says, that makes sense. I have survived abusive relationships, and that's what the dreams are about, right? So it's like you're moving closer to that, but also maybe in the past when you expanded, right? People who are abusive, they dim you down, right? And physically, mentally, emotionally. So then the body has learned, oh, right, yeah. And so Jen says the same thing. Same with the abuse and the dreams, right? And so we want to take that in with such tenderness, like, okay. And at the same time, see that part of her, see like, oh, that's where that's coming from. And being able to stand in your power, in a sense that you're not fighting against something, you're actually centering yourself back in self, where it's like, oh, okay, what do you need? And so you're not trying to find that power from external anymore, because that's what we thought, You know, that's what happens kind of in the abusive cycle, where we kind of get almost brainwashed into thinking, you're my source of power. Because that person feels so powerful, right? They're my source of power. But really, this is your opportunity. This is the body saying, is purging out the fear and saying, you have the power now to hold me. You have the power, this is making me cry. You have the power to hold this pain, right? And this abuse. Not that you're holding anybody else and the story. You're holding yourself in those wounds, right? And so this is your opportunity now to take your power back. And so the body never lies. The body will say, hey, you know, we're still processing this. This is still coming through the body. It doesn't mean that it's happening right now, but there's still some residue of this. And we're here to show you that you have the power to actually hold all of it and all of you in tenderness. And I think that's where the spiritual kind of practice, we get confused because we think when we're in grief or when we're in these deeper kind of darker kind of places that, my spiritual practice, there must be something that's not working. When really, it is working, because now it's like, that part of you, that fear in you has some place to emerge, right? It has this place to be free. And so the way I teach, if you were to work with me, the way I teach our clients is to liberate her in a sense where she has say, so that you can see her and say, what do you need, my love? Physically what she needs, mentally what she needs, energetically what she needs. So all of a sudden now, all of this power, this infinite power, we hone it back, right back into our being. And then we start to realize, oh my God, I had it the whole time. And actually, this experience of abuse, and I think pretty much everybody here on this in the circle, including myself, have experienced that. And so it's actually a gift in disguise. These are like, I've heard it this way, like these angels in disguise who play these roles, and it was not fun, and it was not right. But the gift behind that is that it's this experience saying, hey, you had it all along, right? And here's the contrast, because we live in a world of duality. Here's a contrast, just like really making it obvious, right? That this is your opportunity to move back into your power, to be self-centered, right? The dark side of self-centered will think you're greedy. But the spiritual side of self-centered is you center in yourself. You center in your body. You center in your own truth, in your heart, in your mind. And you center, literally, that's what we teach our clients, is we literally learn how to reallocate energy. So I have a whole training on that. Reallocate energy back into your being. So that you don't feel like you're constantly draining yourself. All right, so let me read. OMG, Myri, thank you so much for bringing this up. And Jamie, thank you for bringing this up. It's been 3 years since the breakup, and I still have PTSD. Okay, so, and that's okay. That's the thing we want to learn. Okay, the fact that we still have like Myri's experience of, waking up in drenched in sweat and nightmares, and Jen having PTSD, and I know other people on this call are experiencing like, panic attacks. Like, we have to make room for that. And that's what we sometimes don't realize in the spiritual practice, is that our practice of presence, our practice of compassion, our practice of tenderness means all the time. When we're in grief, when we're in sadness, when we're in fear, right? It means all the time. And can we almost center in that experience? Because from my point of view, I feel like we as souls are here to experience. all of it. And if you start to observe the human experience, we have these very traumatic experiences, and we have these very spiritual, light experiences. And so can we allow all of it, right? And I think even on a global level, a lot of us still haven't really understood what it means to grieve, right? To lose a way of being and to have abandoned ourself. Because that's the thing, the external is always a manifestation of the internal. So we as human beings, when we continue to abandon, right? Hey, Nicole, abandon ourselves, there is a sense of grief. And we sometimes think it's an abandonment from something else, from that thing that happened with somebody else. But the true spiritual practice is that we are grieving because we've abandoned ourselves. We've abandoned our soul's calling. Is this landing for you guys? Right? And that's where the grief is. And so can we now as a collective understand, these, get curious, right, into these fears, into the experiences you're having in the body and the mind and the energy, and be less harsh or less literally detached. Okay, because that's where we get confused. We start feeling all these feelings, or we have this external chronic kind of thing keep on happening externally, and that's basically the superficial experience and manifestation of actually what's happening deeper. And then we kind of intellectualize it and say, oh, let me just detach, when really we're just numbing, and we're not actually realizing, wow, I am in deep grief of the abandonment of myself. Wow, my physical body is purging this out, right? And can we self-center? Can we center in that, in the moment and in the experience? Because so often we're there and we think something's wrong with us. We're in deep sadness. We're in deep pain. We're in deep fear. And really, I believe that what the antidote for that is to center yourself there. Not to drown in it, not to, again, get caught in the story of it that you were given, right? It's not that. So let me just be clear about that, okay? And not to be in the victim, but to know you're there and approach her with tenderness and give her what she needs. Okay, so Jen, when you ask me that question, what do I do? That's step number one. And that's, if we work together, that's what we do. Step number one is always, always, always giving our core wounds what they need. Because when we start giving her what she needs, right, then she'll feel safe, right? And even she'll feel safe when she feels fearful, when those PTSD feelings come up in her body, in her mind, and her energy, right? She'll feel safe even then, right? It's not that they're going to go away. It's not that she should be healed. It's not that she needs to be fixed. It's not that she has to be enlightened. We need to bring her into the light. And then allow ourselves, once that's clear, right, then that continuation of the download of what you guys were talking about, your unique abilities, then we have the courage to act upon that, right? And be self-centered and give ourselves what it is we need based on our truth that we talked about at the very beginning of this training, right? Center ourselves there and continue to have the courage to take baby steps towards that. Last week's training was all about that, how to achieve big goals. It's a baby step. Here's the the nuance, and that's what we talked about last week, was it's a baby step, but the frequency is not from that unclear frequency of shame, blame, or guilt. So if it's coming from there, you know there's something that is uncleared there. It's coming from a frequency of tenderness. It's coming from a frequency of love. It's coming from a frequency of joy. Yeah? So I hope all of this is kind of making sense to you guys. And so the other thing that, that we do when in our program, when you work with me, is the physical manifestation of money, right? Because what did I talk about? This topic is how spiritual concepts stop your cash flow. One of the big things, and especially in the spiritual community, what I see is that we have our stories about money, right? And yes, baby steps with love, joy, and expectancy. And that's what Nicole says. So we have our stories around money, right? And so what I like to teach our clients is to distill your expertise by listening to that voice, clearing your spiritual house, listening and discerning between the voice of your soul and the voice of the unconscious, okay? Discerning between the two, learning how to work with the unconscious, right? Physically, mentally, and energetically, and then distilling it down so that you can create your expertise and give it to the world at a premium.